It was a very sunny and way too hot day in Rome. I managed to squeeze onto the bus for the airport, and the only reason why I wasn't completely drenched in sweat was because it was still relatively early in the day. And then I saw something peculiar that caught my eye. It was a woman, an Asian woman, coming onto the bus wearing a sort of Hannibal Lecter style face masks with only small holes for the eyes, not even in between here was also covered. So it was completely covered the face, and I thought, okay, she must have some sort of facial feature that she wants to hide, maybe a scar or burn. And then she sat down a couple of rows in front of me, and I noticed that she also wore gloves that didn't only cover her hands, but her entire arms. And then it made click for me. As I've heard before that I and then it made click for me. I've heard before. And then it made click for me. I clicked and then it made quick and then it made click for me. I quickly scanned her and I quickly scanned the rest of her body for and it finally made click for me. I quickly scanned the rest of her body and then didn't notice an entire and it finally made click for me. I quickly scanned the rest of her body and not a single square centimeter of her skin was exposed. I have heard before that it is common for Asian beauty standards. I have heard before that it is an Asian beauty standard to have very pale skin, while I think it's interesting that the Western beauty standard is quite the opposite. Most Westerners or many Westerners tan themselves as much as they can, and the browner, the darker your skin, the more beautiful you are in the Western culture. So I was intrigued and spent my Saturday trying to figure out why those two beauty standards diverge so much. It started as early as 200 BC during the Han Dynasty. It was a time of cultural and economical flourishing, which enabled the nobility to stay indoors and avoid the sun. Farmers who worked in the fields were exposed to it daily and developed naturally a darker skin tone through that exposure. The difference in skin tone was a sign for the nobility for their superiority compared to the laboring class. This trend, that white skin is associated with beauty and wealth, persisted throughout the millennia and is still common in Chinese culture today. And there are two common Chinese sayings that sort of drive the point home. One is Bai Fu Mei, which means white, rich, and beautiful, which is sort of the Chinese ideal of the perfect woman. And the other one is Yi Bai Zhi San Chou, which translated means one white hides three uglies. So in other words, it's the perfect phrase for companies that sell you cream that makes your skin whiter, and they are saying no matter how ugly you are, if you just apply a bunch of our whiteness cream, you will become beautiful again. Now, what I didn't know is that Western culture used to be fairly similar. This painting is by the famous French artist Claude Monet. Back then in Europe, it was also a beauty standard to have pale skin for the same reason that it was a beauty standard 2000 years ago in ancient China. The people that were able to stay indoors were the wealthy ones, and the people that had to work outside on the fields were the poor peasants. And then in the second half of the 19th century, the world would change forever. One of the many side effects of the Industrial Revolution was that all of a sudden you had poor people that were also spending most of their time indoors. Thus, pale skin was suddenly not a distinguishing feature of the elite anymore. Yet being exposed to light was still not seen to benefit the overall health of people until the end of the 19th century. Niels Reiberg Finsen received the Nobel Prize in 1903 for his groundbreaking work in light therapy, which was back then popular since light has some antibacterial effects, and remember that this was still before antibiotics. So the public suddenly came to associate light, and specifically sunlight, with vitality and health. The breakthrough then came through none other than arguably the most influential trendsetter of the 20th century, Coco Chanel. She took a boat tour on a French river and returned to Paris with a suntan that suddenly became the latest hit, and like that, the tan slowly became associated with leisure and the pleasure of vacation that was a privilege of the rich, while the poor had to remain indoors and work. Well, 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 how the turntables. Today, around 40% of Chinese women regularly use skin whiteners, with the skin whitening market being valued at around 30 billion US dollars. The crazy part is that around 40% of British women use skin tanning products such as sunless spray and lotion tanners. The face bronzer market is estimated to be worth around $20 billion, which is unique in the way that these two markets sell a product that has literally the opposite effect of the other, and both can only exist because of the differing cultures and beauty standards. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you feel like this wasn't a complete waste of your time. If you do so, feel free to comment. And yeah, please like the video if you liked it. You can dislike it if you didn't like it. And yeah, thank you again so much for watching.